What's up, guys? It's Josh back with another video, and today I wanted to show you guys how to protect your SSH server with fail to ban using Ubuntu 22.04. Now, if you've been using Linux for a little while, you probably ran across an application called SSH, especially if you have a server. That's typically how you connect to those Linux servers, is using SSH. Well, SSH can be brute forced if the person kind of guessed that password that you have set for it. So I want to show you guys how to set up an application called fail to ban on your Ubuntu 22.04 server that could prevent people from brute forcing your server. And this is something that I've seen, over the years of having multiple Ubuntu servers, set up in the cloud as well as locally at my house. You constantly see these people running scripts that are constantly brute forcing your server. As soon as you connect it to the internet, they seem to find it and just start hacking away, trying to get into your servers. And so you really want to protect it by using this application. I want to show you guys, like I said, how to set up fail to ban and configure it. So let's hop over to my terminal so we can get started with this. Also, before we move forward, I want to give a quick shout out to CIQ as the official supporter of Rocky Linux, which I think is one of the best replacements for your CentOS server. If you haven't been paying attention, Red Hat announced in 2021 it will be going away with CentOS as the downstream clone for Red Hat. And Rocky Linux is here to pick up the pieces. So check out Rocky Linux at ciq.co. Alright, so we are logged in. As you can see up here, it says welcome to Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. And this is a virtual machine that I have in the cloud on Linode. And this is essentially that same server I used in a previous video to set up Jitsi, to show you guys how to set up Jitsi. So it's fully configured. As far as the operating system goes and SSH, I have the firewall enabled, which is one of those things you want to do also besides putting fail to ban on the server. The firewall needs to be fully configured. It has port 22 open. Now you can use a non-standard port if you're using SSH. That's a little bit out of the scope of this video. I just kind of wanted to touch it a little bit so you guys can know. You could change the port number to your SSH server, but like I said, I'll cover that in a later video. And mainly we want to focus on getting fail to ban installed and configured properly so it can start blocking the brute forcing that will happen on the server. Now, fail to ban is included in the Ubuntu software repository, so we don't have to worry about installing any PPAs or anything like that. And it's typically in the repository for most Debian distributions. I haven't ran into a Linux operating system where you couldn't just install fail to ban directly from the main repository of that distribution, because it's a pretty older application that's been around for a while. And the reason it's been around for a while and still being currently used is because it simply works. Now, the first thing you want to do is update your server, and all you have to do is run sudo apt updates, and that'll refresh that repository. Also check to see if we have any updates to the system, which I'm sure we don't, because I just updated it before we started, and it looks like we do. So that fast we had some updates that came in. So let's go down and update the server. Let's run sudo apt upgrade, put a -y on the end of it so it'll go down and install it up, and we're good to go. So it looks like the following packages have been kept back, but well, we could just ignore that. But let's go down and install fail to ban. So all we have to do is type sudo apt install fail to ban, and that's the package name. I want to focus on that so you guys can see how to spell it and everything, but it's fail to ban. And most likely when this video is posted, I'll have an article with all these commands within my documentation website that'll have a link down in the description of the video. So let's go down, press enter, boom, get this thing installed. Let's type Y for yes, we want to use that space on the hard drive, and we're good to go. All right, cool. So Fail to Ban is installed on the system. That's simple, you know, very simple to install. Now let's check the service right fast. Let's just check it right fast. We could type system CTL and then status and then fail to ban.service and press enter, and that'll check that service for us. And as you can see, it's not activated yet. We will activate it in a minute, but first thing you want to do is kind of configure it. So I'll walk you guys through how to configure it. And there is a configuration file under the etc directory, and I'll show you guys that right fast. So let's cd to that directory. So cd etc and then fail to ban, and boom, so that's ls. And that'll show us what's in that file. And what we're looking for is, or that folder directory, we're looking for the gel.config, which is right there. Now what you want to do is create a copy of that file. You don't want to modify the .config. And with some applications, they have it set up this way. If you create a gel.local, which basically a copy of that file, the local file will get looked at as the configuration file, and it'll ignore what's in .conf. That's typically how it works. So all we have to do is type sudo copy gel.conf, and we want to copy that and create a file called gel.local. And like I said, the application will look at the gel.local as the configuration file, and it will ignore the .conf file. So cool, we're good. So let's go down and modify our configure our fail to ban server. So all we have to do is type sudo nano, and you can open up whatever text editor you like, but gel.local, press enter, and this is the typical file for it. Now this is what I wanted to show you right here. This is basically what I stated right here. Whenever you make changes to it, it says in most of the cases you should not modify this file, and specifically what it's talking about is the gel.config file or conf file. It basically says but provide customizations in gel.local. So that's exactly what we did. It actually tells you that in the configuration file that the best way to actually use this file is to create a gel.local, and that way you can make all your changes here, and then you don't have to worry about during updates if, let's say, a config file has been changed. It won't overwrite your .local file. So now let's modify this file. Pretty much the top, a lot of it is simply commented out, mainly for examples. So for instance, in order to enable a gel, like for instance they're using SSHD here, which is the SSH server, essentially what you need to put is enabled equals true. So let's find our gels. Like I said, this is all information at the top. You can read through it, you know, check it out for yourself, but let's scroll down and find our SSHD gel, and I'll show you guys a little bit more. It's a couple other options I wanted to kind of show you guys, but mainly I want to focus on that first, and then we can go up. Now with fail to ban, it offers protection for a whole bunch of services, so like Apache, obviously SSH, which is what we're going to use it for, MySQL. And essentially what it does is, as people brute force that port and try to make a connection to your server, if it fails a certain amount of times, then it will block that IP address, and it won't allow that IP address to continue trying to connect to your server. And essentially all you're doing is annoying the brute forcers, so they'll eventually give up on this server. Because a lot of times, yeah, if their IP gets blocked, they'll just get another IP address or connect via another VPN or something to try to brute force it again. But eventually it gets to the point where it's just not worth it to keep going. It's not 100% protection, but it's just a way to try to slow it down and slow them down, therefore making them want to give up on trying to attack your server. So we found the SSHD server, and what you want to type in here under SSHD, which I'll leave all those comments there, but yeah, I mean, you really don't need them. Let's open up a spot right here, but under SSHD, let's go down and type enabled equals true, and that'll activate that service. So essentially SSHD is activated. Now let's go back up to the top, and I really wanted to show you guys this first so you can see that they do have a whole bunch of services, but we had to go up and make a couple more changes up here. And let's go down and make some, and let's go down and add let's see, 2 more things. Let's create another line in here, and we can set our ban time. So let's type ban time equals and equals 10 minutes. Let's just do 10 minutes, and then let's add another option. Let's see, max retry. Just so you guys could understand what retry is essentially how many times before a person gets banned. That's essentially what this is. So you can set this to anything. You could do 3 times, you could do 5 times, but each time they fail to authenticate to whatever service, it'll get tagged or whatever, or tracked, and once it reaches that max retry, it'll ban the IP address. So that's essentially what that is. And also you want to add another option in here, and that's find time. And basically you can set a time between each retry. So if it happens within 10 minutes or so, then it'll ban. So it works together. So if you got 5 retries within a max of 5 or 10 minutes or so, that lets you know that a human is not typing in those passwords, you know, and so it's going like too fast. And you can do like 5 minutes or so, but that's essentially a window of time. And if they hit like, you know, 5 retries within that 10-minute period or 10-minute window, that'll ban it as well. So let's go down and save, because we have SSH enabled 100%. And one thing I also wanted to show you guys, if you go back up here to the top, they do have some defaults. You can go through these defaults. Typically all I ever use is SSH, but you can set your defaults for all the jails that you have services for. Like you can set some of these same settings there. So your ban times 10 minutes, find time 10 minutes, max equals 5, and this all falls under our default. See, so default is enabled, and anything that's uncommented under here is defaults. So that's essentially everything. Now there's a couple other things, and you can look at it kind of like global settings, because that's the settings that it'll default to for every service that you activate on the server. Now, one other thing I want to show you guys, ignore yourself. You could put that on here. You can enable that. That'll ignore your local IP address. And you can also, let's say you're trying to, you're only going to connect to this server from your IP address at your house. And you're connecting to a cloud server or something, you can ignore your IP address. So that means that all those settings, they won't apply to you. You know what I'm saying? As you're connected. So if you fail typing in your passwords, you don't have to worry about your computer that you're connecting from getting banned, unless you're, you know, move to another location, you take your laptop with you, and you accidentally type in that password, you know, too many wrong times, then it'll ban whatever IP address you're connecting from, and then you will have to connect to the cloud server and remove that ban, or wait the, you know, the full 10 minutes before that IP address is unbanned, and try again. Now let's go down and save this. I'm gonna hit Control X and then type Y to save the changes. Boom. And now let's go down and enable our service. So all we have to do is type sudo system ctl enable fail to ban.service. Press enter. That'll enable the service for us. And now let's go back and start the service, because enabling won't start it. Enabling it is just setting it so the server will start fail to ban every time the server is rebooted and booted up, into the operating system. Then it'll start fail to ban service as the server comes up. So just press enter, that way we can start it. Now let's check the status of it right fast. So let's type status, boom, and it's active and running, so we're good to go. So fail to ban is running on this server with the settings that we made, and I recommend you read the documentation so you can understand the different ways to configure it to protect your SSH server. So get a little bit more information looking at the documentation for fail to ban so you can get a better understanding of the options. I just wanted to show you guys the base options of how to set it up. Now let me show you guys that this actually works. One thing I'm gonna do is connect from a VPN, fail a bunch of times by typing in a password a couple different times, and then until it's banned, and then disconnect from the VPN, log back into the server, and I can show you that that IP address has been banned. So I'll be right back with that. Alright, so what it looks like, I'm blocked now. It's not even responding to anything from my IP address. It's basically timing out, so that lets me know that I blocked. But that's the IP address of the actual server that I've been SSH into. But let's go down, disconnect from our VPN, and then I'll connect back and show you guys how it was banned. Alright, so let's connect back to my server now. As you can see, it's pulling up the password login, because it basically banned the IP address of my VPN, so I don't have to worry about it banning my local IP address, and I won't be able to get access to this server anymore. But that's potentially what can happen if you type in the password wrong multiple times. That's why you want to look into those configurations on how to add your IP address of your local IP address, so it never bans that address. Now let's check the IPs that are blocked, and essentially what this application uses is IP tables. And when I showed you guys the firewall, setting up the firewall in a previous video, I showed you guys UFW, which is the application that sits on top of IP tables. Well, IP tables is a little bit more complicated to use, but it's also more powerful. So it's best to learn IP tables as well. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple commands on finding the actual ban within IP tables. So let's go down and type sudo IP tables. And then let's go -s, and then let's grep for fail to ban. And I know what it's called. It's FTB. Press enter, and let's type in our sudo password. Boom. And as you can see, that's the IP address that was rejected, and it looks like it's already starting to ban other servers. But I believe this is the IP address that I had via my VPN. That's the one, the latest one. So I believe that's it right there. It's one of these IP addresses, but they're basically rejected. So you can't connect from those IP addresses for up to 10 minutes. So somebody may be brute forcing the server right now. So that's super cool to actually see. Now let me show you guys a couple other commands that are built into fail to ban. So let's clear the screen and type sudo fail to ban -clients, and what we're looking for is the status. And then also let's just narrow it down to SSHD and press enter, and that'll show us all the IP addresses that are banned. So as you can see, banned IP addresses. So someone is actually brute forcing this server currently. I didn't know that before doing this. This server has only been up for a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days, but as you can see, it's already got some IP addresses that is banned. And I don't care about my VPN that I had, it'll drop off after 10 minutes or so. That's essentially, how I set it up. So it'll block it and then, unblock it after a certain amount of time. So we're good to go. And it's essentially looking at the Vorlog authentication logs. And I did a video on Failed to Ban in the past showing you guys the authentication logs, but every time someone tries to connect to the server via SSH, is put into the authentication log, and it's pretty much any connection, and so essentially Failed to Ban is searching that authentication log, monitoring it, looking for failed attempts, because each time, like I said, someone tries to log into the server, it's logged. And so it's logged with the IP address that they're trying to connect from. And so it uses that information to then write out the IP tables command to block connections from that IP address for the specific time that we have set in jail. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was a very simple tutorial on Failed to Ban. I want you guys to actually check it out. Like I said, a little bit more, look at the documentation, because this application is super powerful, and you can manage a whole bunch of services like you've seen within that jail configuration file. So please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave comments down in the comments below, and also the commands that I ran today will be on my documentation website. The link will be down in the description as well. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, and of course, keep it techie.